You're at 2% battery, an important call is coming in, and you find a cable, but it's the wrong shape. You find another it fits, but it asks for a device you threw away in 2012. This frustration is into just a personal annoyance. It is the physical manifestation of 3 decades of corporate warfare, engineering hurdles, and a fragmented technological ecosystem that seemed designed to fail us. But today, we are witnessing the end of that era. We are living through the reign of a single, elegant, oval-shaped hero that has done the impossible. It has brought the giants of Silicon Valley to their knees and unified our digital lives. This is the story of USB-C, the connector that finally promised us peace. In the early 1990s, the back of a PC was a terrifying place. If you wanted to plug in a mouse, you used a round PS2 port. A keyboard? Another PS2 port, but God help you if you swap them. Printers required the parallel port, a massive 25-pin monstrosity that looked like a row of teeth and required thumb screws to stay in place. Joysticks used game ports, monitors used VGA, and external drives used SCSI, a connector so temperamental that it often required terminators to prevent data signals from reflecting back like an echo and crashing the entire system. The most offensive part of this era wasn't just the size of the connectors. It was the lack of intelligence. In the 1990s, plug and play was a cruel joke often referred to as plug and pray. If you connected a new device, you usually had to shut down the entire computer, physically move jumpers on a motherboard, to assign an interrupt request, IRQ lane, and then pray that the software didn't conflict with your sound card. There was no hot swapping. Unplugging a mouse while the computer was on could, in some extreme cases, fry the motherboard or, at the very least, lock the system into a blue screen coma. The industry was suffocating under its own complexity. Each port was a specialized silo. A serial port couldn't send video. A power cord couldn't send data. We were building a digital Tower of Babel where no two components spoke the same language or shared the same throat. In 1996, a consortium of giants Intel, Microsoft, IBM, and others decided to end the madness. They dreamed of a universal serial bus. The promise was intoxicating, one port for everything. No more thumb screws, no more IRQ conflicts. And most importantly, the ability to plug things in while the computer was actually running. When USB 1.1 arrived, it felt like magic. You could plug in a mouse, and it just worked. But as the 2000s dawned, a new problem emerged. Computers were shrinking. The original USB Type-A, the flat rectangle we all know, was too big for the burgeoning world of flip phones, MP3 players, and slim digital cameras. Instead of sticking to the universal promise, the standard fractured. To accommodate smaller devices, the industry birthed mini USB. Then, realizing mini USB wasn't durable enough for phones, they created micro USB. Then came the bulky Type B for printers. By 2010, the universal serial bus had become a joke. You still needed 5 different cables to get through a vacation. The drawer of doom was growing faster than ever, filled with cables that looked almost identical but were off by a fraction of a millimeter, rendered useless by the relentless march of slimmer hardware. We had traded 25-pin parallel ports for a dozen different tiny USB shapes. We weren't unified, we were just differently messy. By 2014, the industry realized that if they didn't fix this now, the mobile revolution would drown in e-waste. They needed a final connector. It had to be small enough for a phone but powerful enough for a workstation. It had to be durable. And for the love of all things holy, it had to be reversible. Enter USB-C. At first glance, it's just a tiny oval-shaped hole. But inside that hole is a masterpiece of micro-engineering. While the original USB had 4 pins, USB-C has 24. These pins are arranged with perfect rotational symmetry. This is why you can plug it in upside down and it still works. The port detects its orientation and reassigns the pin's functions in a millisecond. But the 24 pins weren't just about convenience. They were about negotiation. In previous generations, a cable was a dumb pipe. USB-C cables, however, contain tiny microchips, e-markers, that talk to the device. When you plug a USB-C cable into a laptop, a high-speed digital handshake occurs. The device asks, "Who are you? What can you do?" And the cable responds, "I can handle 100 watts of power and 40 gigabits of data." This handshake capability unlocked what engineers call alternate modes. This is the superpower of USB-C. Because the pins are programmable, they can stop acting like a USB port and start pretending to be something else entirely. With the right handshake, those 24 pins can carry DisplayPort signals to run a 4K monitor. They can carry Thunderbolt signals to talk to external graphics cards at blistering speeds. They can even carry high-fidelity analog audio. Suddenly, the dream of the 1990s was realized. One port could truly do everything. A single cable could replace the VGA cord, the power brick, the mouse lid, and the data transfer cable. This versatility turned the USB-C port into a multifunction bridge. It allowed for the creation of single cable setups, where a person could walk into an office, plug one USB-C cable into their laptop, and instantly have power, dual monitors, a wired internet connection, and external speakers. It was the end of the messy back of the PC. Perhaps the most significant game changer wasn't the data speed, but the power. Historically, laptops required massive, proprietary power bricks. If you forgot your Dell charger, a Lenovo charger wouldn't save you even if the plug fit. The voltage might fry your motherboard. USB-C introduced power delivery, PD. This is a smart charging protocol that scales. A USB-C charger can talk to a tiny pair of wireless earbuds and give them a gentle trickle of 5 watts. Then, you can take that same charger, plug it into a beefy MacBook Pro, and the charger will negotiate up to 140 watts or more. This created a shared charging ecosystem. For the first time in history, the charger was separated from the device. This wasn't just a win for convenience. It was a massive strike against e-waste. We no longer needed to throw away a perfectly good power brick just because we bought a new laptop. One supercharger could rule them all. However, there was one major holdout: Apple. While Apple was actually an early pioneer of USB-C, putting it on the MacBook in 2015, they stubbornly refused to put it on the iPhone. Instead, they clung to their proprietary Lightning connector. To Apple, Lightning was a masterpiece of design, slimmer than USB-C and incredibly durable. But to critics, Lightning was a walled garden. By owning the Lightning standard, Apple could charge third-party accessory makers a licensing fee for every cable sold, the MFI program. It also meant that even if you had a USB-C cable for your iPad and Mac, you still needed a different cable for your iPhone. The standoff lasted a decade. Apple argued that forcing a switch to USB-C would stifle innovation and create more e-waste by making billions of Lightning accessories obsolete. But the European Union didn't buy it. Seeing a mountain of e-waste and a frustrated populace, the EU passed a landmark regulation. By late 2024, all small electronic devices sold in the EU must use USB-C. Apple was backed into a corner. In 2023, with the release of the iPhone 15, the unthinkable happened. The Lightning port was retired. The world's most influential tech product had finally joined the universal standard. The Great Cable War was effectively over. We should be celebrating, right? We have the one port. The dream is here. But as we enter this new era, a final subtle complication has emerged. We've solved the shape problem, but we haven't quite solved the brain problem. Because USB-C is so versatile, it is now confusing in a new, invisible way. You can have two cables on your desk that look identical, both have that sleek oval tip. However, one might be a $5 charging-only cable that transfers data at the pathetic speed of a 1998 floppy disk. The other might be a $50 Thunderbolt 4 cable capable of driving a cinema-grade monitor. If you plug the cheap cable into your high-end hard drive, it will work, but it will be painfully slow. There is no visual way to tell them apart. This has created a new kind of compatibility trap. We've moved from "it won't fit" to "it fits," but it's not doing what I want it to do. The industry is still struggling to label these cables clearly, leaving consumers to navigate a sea of logos and technical specifications. Despite this last mile of confusion, we are living in a golden age of connectivity. Think about the last time you traveled. 10 years ago, your bag would have been a tangled mess of proprietary cords. Today, many of us can travel the world with a single high-quality USB-C cable and one compact gallium nitride GaN charger. That one cable charges the phone, the laptop, the headphones, the e-reader, and even the toothbrush. This isn't just about avoiding a messy drawer. It's about a fundamental shift in how we interact with technology. Technology is at its best when it becomes invisible when it gets out of the way. The USB-C revolution is the story of how we stopped serving the machine's needs and made the machine serve ours. We have moved from the chaos of the 90s through the fracture of the 2000s to the unity of the 2020s. The drawer of doom in your house is finally becoming a relic of the past, a dusty museum of how things used to be. As those old mismatched cables are recycled, they are replaced by a single, elegant, oval thread that connects our digital lives. It took 30 years, thousands of failed designs, and an act of international law, but we finally got there. We can finally stop worrying about the plug and start focusing on the connection. And that, in the fast-paced world of tech, is a victory worth celebrating. So, the next time you hear that satisfying click as your USB-C cable slides into place regardless of the brand on the device, take a second to appreciate the decades of war it took to make that simple moment possible. The universal dream has finally, mostly arrived. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today. Wishing you all the very best of health and happiness. And if you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the heart of technology.